Welcome to the Militia gaming community. I'm Trigger, and today we talk about Need for Speed driving for beginners. Let's go. I've been getting a lot of comments and DMs about driving guides for Unbound because it feels quite a bit different than Heat, and the mechanics and concepts are really not taught well by the game itself. So I'm going to break it down to the most important things to understand about driving faster in Need for Speed Unbound. Let's start at the start of the race, the perfect launch mechanic. So they've added a perfect launch mechanic, and there are two parts to this that you need to understand. First, notice on the speedometer there's a small bar. This is the perfect launch zone for the RPMs of your car. In order to launch correctly, you need to have the RPM gauge in that section when the countdown is finished and the race starts. This will limit the wheel spin at the start and allow your car to accelerate with traction. Some cars are slipperier than others, so don't worry if you do it right and still see a little bit of wheel spin. That's normal depending on the car. Also, if you do it wrong, you will know. The car won't move, you'll feel like it's stuck in the mud and it's not going anywhere. Also, there's a visual cue that lets you know you got it right. Your car will be outlined in a color that matches the tags you have equipped. Secondly, to properly start a race, you should actually be emptying your NOS from the start. With the correct driving technique, you will be filling that bottle several times throughout the race, and you want to get to top speed as fast as possible off the starting line, so empty it immediately. Keep in mind though, if the first turn comes up before your NOS is empty, then of course let off and make the turn. Next, we need to talk about burst NOS. This is different than your actual NOS bottle. Burst NOS is represented by the yellow bars that are next to your speedometer, and it has 3 sections to it. If you manage to fill all 3 of those sections, you get a very strong burst of NOS. Less bars equals less burst. Seems pretty simple, but there are some tactics that you will need to know to take full advantage of this mechanic. The first is that you lose your burst NOS if you don't use it, and the timeline for that is very short. It's within a couple of seconds. So in general, when you've got it, you should use it. Also, there are a few things that will fill up those bars. Drafting other cars in the race or police cars, drifting, grip turns, jumping, near misses with traffic cars, and near misses with cops. Near misses with cops rewards you a lot more than a near miss with a traffic car. I might be forgetting one, but those are the most important and the most common cases where you'll be rewarded with burst NOS. Knowing how you earn it, you can plan your usage. Like when you drift a turn and need a boost coming out of a corner, you see a little yellow bar is full, then pop it by tapping the NOS button. You can also combine that action with your regular NOS tank just by pressing and holding. So to activate burst NOS, you just tap the NOS button. To activate your regular NOS, you tap and hold the NOS button. There are many different scenarios where your burst NOS should be used. Coming out of turns is definitely one, unless the race you're in allows you to string together consecutive drifts or grip turns, thus filling up more of the bars. Or if you drift a corner and then immediately start drafting another player or AI, you can wait until it's full and then use it all at once. But like I said, you lose that burst NOS very quickly. So if you're not going to string together a series of those events, drafting, drifting, grip turns, jumping, near misses, if you're not going to string together a bunch of those in a row, then you just use the one bar once you get it. And that brings me to the next mechanic, drafting. Drafting is where you're following close enough behind the car in front of you to take advantage of them breaking through the air for you, so your car doesn't have to do that. But in this game, not only does your car benefit from the air being broken, meaning you are a little bit faster when you're drafting, but you also fill up your burst NOS. At the start of the race, you'll want to draft anyone that's in front of you for as long as you can before you begin to overtake them. Basically, any chance you get to draft another player or AI, you should go ahead and do so. Just don't follow them to the point of making the same mistake they do in a corner or on the highway. Keep your eyes on the line that you want and not the line that they are taking. This goes for the AI in solo as well. The AI in this game crash more than I've ever seen in a game, so follow them with care. Next up is drifting. I'll admit it, drifting corners in this game is completely different than Heat. There are a lot of little nuances that will determine your success. The first is the angle you take. A tighter angle on the inside of a turn will require a more aggressive drift angle, and it will slow you down a lot. Sometimes that's all the AI or other players will give you in a turn because you're kind of trapped on the inside of the corner, but try to avoid this as much as you can. Also, too wide of an angle will slow you down because you'll be sliding way too long before regaining traction. The ideal drift follows the correct racing line, starting wide, turn into the apex, and end with lots of speed wide again. This really isn't new. What is new is that with Burst NOS, you can actually start wide, turn into the apex, and as soon as the nose of your car is pointing in the right direction and you've cleared the corner, you can tap your Burst NOS and use that to immediately cancel your drift and propel you in the direction your car is facing. You could be accidentally sliding towards a wall and then pop your Burst NOS and it will stop the slide and push you in the direction the nose of the car is facing. It's wild and it's actually super fun. Knowing this will allow for more aggressive overtakes and more cutting of corners. Cutting corners using Burst NOS after a drift is one of the best ways to keep up with the AI that have faster cars than you. Now that you understand the basics of why and when to drift, let's talk about your drift technique. To initiate a drift, you will either tap the gas or the brake, depending on the tuning setting for your car. You can check which one it is by pausing and going to the handling setting. The default selection is gas and brake, which means you can use either or, but this is really confusing and I suggest using one or the other. If you select gas to drift, you will need to know this. Only a quick tap of the gas after you've already been on the gas will initiate the drift, meaning if you let off the gas to slow down for a corner and then try to smash the gas to initiate the drift like you would in Need for Speed Heat, you will actually initiate a grip turn instead, which will definitely throw you off your line if you're not prepared for it. The same goes for the brake tap. If you tap the brakes while entering a turn, it will initiate a drift, but if you hold the brakes to slow down for the turn, it will initiate a grip turn. Some cars are better with drift and some cars are better with grip. You will need to play around with it a little bit and determine this for yourself based on the car you like using. Let's talk about grip turning. Gripping a turn will reward you with more Burst NOS than drifting it, so oftentimes it's better to have a grip build than it is to have a drift build on your car. There are some cars that are just not competitive with either of those things, but in general, the grip cars tend to be a bit faster, especially in the higher tiers like S and S+, because the game rewards you with so much more NOS for gripping. The higher your grip setting for your car, the tighter turn you can take. If you upgrade your car enough to have 100% grip, then you will notice it feels glued to the ground. This is very helpful for the speed races, which are the longer highway races that focus on top speed. It will be easier to keep your car steady and not fishtail or spin out in those races. It's also super noticeable in the tighter courses as well, but you must drive differently. Grip turning is very viable in this game. Right now, I believe it's actually the meta. In low-end cars, drifting seems to be a little bit better most of the time, as it's a bit harder to engage a grip turn at lower speeds, but in the higher tiers, S and S+, and even A+, grip turning seems to be better because you can take better advantage of the Burst NOS that it gives you. Well, let's talk about how to grip a turn. There's a few ways to initiate a grip turn. You can either not let off the gas at all and not touch the brake and just take the corner. This is usually done on the highway sections where it's not necessary to brake. Your car will grip the turn and the game will reward you with some Burst NOS. Again, this is if you just don't do anything but steer around the corner. Or you can purposely initiate a grip turn by letting off the gas well before the turn to slow down and get back on the throttle and steer through the corner, not touching the brake at all. Or you can brake heavily leading up to the turn and then smash the gas and make the turn. All of those scenarios will lead to a grip turn and some Burst NOS at the end. The game rewards you with Burst NOS once the turn is complete. So you will notice it sometimes feels really delayed because it's waiting for you to stop turning and to be going straight. Just a small tip, right now it seems like brake to drift is the best for grip cars. There's still a lot of testing that needs to be done, but that definitely feels the best and comes highly recommended from the competitive community. I plan to make a more advanced guide on these techniques, so stay tuned to the channel if you're interested in that. But hopefully this has at least helped you understand the driving mechanics of the game, which should result in faster times, easier races against AI and other players, and overall more fun just playing the game. Sometimes things don't make it into the videos, so if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask me through DMs. My DMs are always open and I read every message. Thank you so much for watching. Shout out to all the Heat 5 members of the channel. Trigger out.